everyone! So in the month of April we participated in a very fun readathon called the O.W.L.S Readathon, which was a magical Harry Potter inspired readathon that Book Roast hosted. So we each picked 5 different books corresponding with 5 different Hogwarts classes, and we needed to take our O.W.L.S exams on them. So I don't know how these guys did, but let's see what we read during April. So the first class is Ancient Runes, is a book with a symbol on the cover. Did either of you guys do this one?
I said I was going to, and then I switched it up.
I said I was going to, and I did it. And my pick for that was The Wicker King by Ancrum, because it's got a million symbols all over it. And I really enjoyed this one. I think I gave it 4 stars. I'm really terrible at remembering my star ratings. So this was a really neat book. It was set in the late 90s, which is like, kind of like, I wasn't a teenager at that point, but I relate a lot. And
Still a formative time for sure.
Yeah. And it was like, the way that I would describe reading this is almost like watching an indie film from the 90s. Like, it's really interesting. It's kind of like mixed media. So it has like, you know, police reports, and it even has like CDs, and all of the music is from the 90s.
That's cool.
So I really liked that.
Weezer.
Yeah. And it's about 2 guys who are friends, and one is dealing with like schizophrenia, and so he's starting to hallucinate and see things that aren't there, and then the other one is a like pyromaniac. And they have a really odd friendship. It's very intense.
Sounds dysfunctional.
Yeah, it's a bit dysfunctional, but they also like love each other a lot. And as the character with schizophrenia, things are getting worse and worse because he's not going for treatment and he's like keeping it secret. And as his mental state kind of deteriorates, the pages get darker to kind of symbolize really cool. It getting worse. But yeah, it was very different from anything else I've ever read. And just like really atmospheric, dark, really interesting writing style. Like, I'll definitely be picking up this author's next book, which I think is coming out next year, because it's just really good.
I haven't heard much people talk about that one.
Yeah. Yeah, it was very interesting. Cool. I'm glad I picked it up.
So I picked this one on my TBR, and I read it, and that is Undead Girl Game by Lily Anderson. This comes out in May, so pick it up soon. I think a lot of people will really like this book, but I had something weird happen when I was reading it. So there's like a scene in this book involving a lot of mushrooms.
Oh, you told me about that.
I know, and I didn't know it was gonna scar me, but it did. Something about it like triggered me in some way that I was like so like disturbed
and like unprepared for.
Just like unprepared, and like now I like can't look at mushrooms.
Oh no!
Like,
so unfortunate.
I just don't know. Like something weird happened. So this
visceral.
Book, yeah, and it's definitely a fun story, and I think a lot of people are really gonna like it. This is a story about a girl whose best friend dies, and then she goes and brings her back to life.
Oh.
But it's like not everything's as it seems, and it's really fun. It was a fast read, but it wasn't really my thing, and I ended up giving it 3 stars. But I do think a lot of people will really like this one. Cool. And it has symbols on the cover.
Nice. Very good.
So the next class is Rhythmic. Read a book with a number on the cover or in the title. Did either of you do this one?
I did. So I read The Inventors at number 8 by A.M. Morgen. This one is also coming out in May, so soon you can go get this one in stores. This was really fun. I can't remember what rating I gave it, but I think at least a 4. So it's about a little boy whose family has all passed away, and he's sort of like in charge of this gigantic mansion, and like the one thing he has that's still of any value is a map that his grandfather gave him. And then he meets a girl who lives next door, who it turns out is based on the real life Ava Lovelace, I believe is her name.
Sounds familiar. I don't know
who that is. Was the daughter of Lord Byron. And was like an inventor and a crazy scientist who did a lot of like steampunky kind of stuff. So there's a lot of steampunk elements, including this amazing like bird flying machine on the front. So the main character and Ada and this guy, whose name Oscar, along with Oscar's pet orangutan, go off on this wild adventure. There's other people after the map as well, and there's like a treasure at the end, and it was a lot of fun.
Nice.
Yeah, I would highly recommend this one.
It looks fun.
Yeah.
Cool. I did not pick that one either. And okay, so the next class is astronomy. Read a science fiction novel. So I did do this.
I did that as well.
You can go first. Yeah.
Oh. So mine pick for this was The Loneliest Girl in the Universe by Lauren James, which I absolutely love. 5 stars. I read it in like just a few hours.
Nice.
I couldn't put it down. And it's the story of a girl whose parents were chosen to be part of this mission where they would go on a spaceship and try and find a new planet to inhabit. They were part of like a larger team, and everybody else was going to be kind of put in like a frozen sleep state. And there would always be 2 astronauts awake the whole time, and they would kind of switch off in shifts. But then something happens that causes, well, her parents have her. They give birth to her. So she's born on the spaceship.
Oh.
And this causes her parents to not want to go to sleep and have other people
Right.
wake up to take care of her. So they never switch out. And then an accident happens where both of her parents are killed when she is 11. So she's the only person awake on the spaceship. And it's kind of just, I think we start this when she's like 17, so she's been alone for years. And her only communication with anybody else is her therapist back on Earth. But it's also interesting because it takes 2 years for her to receive a message from Earth and vice versa because she's so far away. So everything that she receives is 2 years old. And she starts to receive messages that there's been a war on Earth and that the like space station in NASA has kind of been taken over by a dictator.
Oh.
It's very interesting. This is really cool. Well, it's bad, but interesting. Anyways, and she also learns that another ship has been sent that is faster than hers, and the plan is for that ship to catch up to hers and kind of attach, and then they will go on to the new planet together. So she starts talking to the person on this ship and kind of forming a friendship with them. And as the ship gets closer, she starts to realize that this person might not be what they say they are, and it gets really intense and messed up and scary. And it's just like, yeah, it's so good. It's like such a thriller, all set in space.
That sounds really good.
And as someone who doesn't really like sci-fi that much, like, I loved this. It was the perfect amount of like technology, but it was mostly just a thriller. It's just such an interesting concept, so I really enjoyed this one. This one comes out in July in North America. It's already out in the UK, but I really liked it.
Cool.
Nice.
Yeah.
I also did this one, although I have to admit I'm not completely through it yet, so I guess I fail one of my classes. It's a reread for me, so I have read this one before, but yeah, I'm not quite through it yet. But I had forgotten like just how scary this one is in a very like beautiful, quiet way. Like it's not like jump scares and like extreme horror or anything, but just like it's so atmospheric,
Like unsettling.
so unsettling, and just the whole way through you're like, what is going on? And I know what's going on, and I'm still like just at the edge of my seat. And I really, really love this trilogy. It's really bizarre, and it's also, I'm not a huge science fiction person, but this one really just pulled me in.
I picked an OwlCrate book. I read this first during March, Heart of Iron by Ashley Poston, but then I had to reread it during the readathon for book club. And this is definitely sci-fi.
Yeah.
By now, I'm sure you all know what this is because it's an OwlCrate book. But this is Anastasia in Space. So
Oh, I didn't know that.
yeah.
Yeah.
So it's a fun story. I don't give star ratings to OwlCrate books, so I'm not going to do that. But yeah, so this is a really fun sci-fi book, and it's going to be a duology, we have learned.
Yes.
Cool.
Next up is Care of Magical Creatures. Read a book that includes magical creatures or features a magical creature on the cover.
I did this one.
I did not.
So for this one, I chose City of Islands by Callie Wallace. I just finished this one a couple days ago, and I am gonna go out on a limb and say that this is my favorite book that I've read this year.
Wow.
yeah, I was really just like taken aback by the world that she's created. I'm still sort of trying to figure out my elevator pitch for this book because it is like a bit of a confusing setup, but our main character is 12 years old. She's an orphan, and sort of from the time that her parents died when she was about 5. She was briefly living with a bone mage. So in this world, there's mages that can sort of speak to different elements. So there's bone mages and stone and water and like just all of the elements that they can sort of, they like sing spells to them and bring them to life. And then the mage disappeared, and so then she's been working for a fisherman as a diver. So in the first couple chapters, she's told that there's like somebody has discovered a bunch of like unusual bones, and she goes down to find them, and they're the remnants of like the ancient civilization's magical creatures. And then because of those, because she's the one who found them, she gets pulled into this expedition basically. But yeah, it opens with a map that like shows all of the islands.
Oh, cool.
I don't think I've ever referred to a map as much in one reading where I'm like, okay, this is where they are, this is what's going on. But yeah, it was like, it was extraordinary. I really, really loved this one. Yeah, I would say that so far, this is this year's Orphan Island.
Nice.
Oh, both islands.
Oh yeah.
I have a type.
I think I'm gonna have to borrow that from you.
Yeah, for sure. So 5 stars for sure. This one comes out in July.
Next up is Charms, and that's to read a fantasy book.
I didn't use that.
I didn't use that one either.
Then we have Defense Against the Dark Arts, a book about featuring secret societies or clubs.
I did do that one.
Me too.
Me too.
Me first?
Sure.
So for that, I chose The Unbound by Victoria Schwab. I'm trying to read the few Victoria Schwab books that I haven't read yet, so I was really excited to use this for that prompt. And I loved it. 5 stars.
Surprise, surprise.
I feel like the series kind of gets mixed reviews, but I think it's like amazing and really underhyped when it comes to her books. And it's about, like, in this world, when someone dies, their body is taken to what's called the library, and their kind of like soul is like shelved with all the other dead people. And there's like librarians that look after this place, and then there's also keepers whose job it is, sometimes when these people, they can accidentally wake up and escape from the library, and there's keepers who have to like rein them back in and re-shelve them. And our main character is a keeper. And this is the second book in the series. And it kind of just takes place right after the events of the first one. Some really messed up stuff happens at the end of the first book, and one thing that I appreciated in this one is our main character has PTSD from it, and it's handled really well, and what I imagine is pretty accurate. Like, it's not something that's fixed within the first few chapters, like it lingers and it's a problem for her. And yeah, and I just love it. And unfortunately, this like series was meant to be 3 books, but only 2 ever were published. I know that Victoria wants to publish the 3rd, but there's a lot of confusing legalities with the publishing industry and stuff, so I don't know if that's ever going to happen. I hope it does. This book kind of ends not on a cliffhanger necessarily. Like, you could be satisfied with how it ends and think of it as a duology, but I think it's hard just knowing that there's supposed to be a 3rd book. Like, she's like written and knows what the 3rd book should be, so it's weird knowing
really
that's
frustrating.
yeah. But I loved it, and yeah, really good.
Cool. So for this one, I chose The Legend of Greg, an epic series of failures by Chris Rylander. I had never read any of his books before, but I know he was like quite a popular middle grade author, and I really enjoyed this one. So the main character in this one is Greg, surprise, surprise, and he learns in the first couple of chapters that he is a dwarf. He comes from a long line of magical dwarves, and that there is like a well-established dwarf base, basically, like underneath the city of Chicago, which happens to be like where the main headquarters is, and that lots of people, like celebrities and everybody, like tons of people have dwarf blood or elf blood, who are their like sworn enemies. But I really enjoyed this one. I won't spoil anything else for it, but I loved the like underground lair that they have where they do all their like training and stuff and just hang out together. It was super fun. Yeah.
It looks so much fun. Look at that cover.
Yeah, it was really funny. It was like packed with adventure. Totally recommend this one, and it comes out in June.
Nice. So I also did this one, and I picked The Love Interest by Cale Dietrich. So this is a story about there's a secret society where these people are raised to become love interests. So they are raised to be like a typical, like stereotypical good guy or a stereotypical bad guy, and then they are sent out into the world to try to make influential people fall in love with them to earn their secrets. Super silly, so tongue-in-cheek. There's actually like a moment in here where the character says to his like trainer, being like, "Why don't you wait till we're a bit older? Isn't being a teenager too young to like fall in love?" And she's like, "Haven't you read a YA novel lately?" And I just found that, like, that's so funny. It's very, very self-aware, and I thought it was I really enjoyed the story. I didn't think the writing was great, unfortunately. Like, I understand why people say the writing isn't their favorite in here, but I enjoyed the tongue-in-cheek nature of the story. So next up we have A Divination, read a book featuring prophecies.
Didn't do this one.
Didn't do that one.
Next up we have Herbology, read a book with a nature-related word in the title.
I did do this one.
This is another one I said I was going to do and then switched my classes.
I chose The Forest Queen by Betsy Cornwell, and all I knew about this one was that it was a gender-swapped retelling of Robin Hood, which sounded pretty badass. I think I was kind of imagining a really adventure-packed book that was really like fun, and that's not what this is. So I ended up only giving this 3 stars, and surprisingly it took me quite a long time to get through it considering how short it is, which I think that's kind of a bad sign too. But I didn't hate it, but this is almost like pretty much 90% of the book is just about this character who's supposed to represent Robin Hood, like running away from home with her friends and like living off the land in the forest, which is cool in its own way. And I think if I knew that going into it, I probably would have enjoyed it more. But it was like really slow, just really slow burn, just about this like privileged girl learning how to live in the forest and kind of survive on her own, which was like cool, but it just wasn't what I was expecting. Right. So this was my least favorite of the books I read, but it still wasn't bad. I feel like a lot of people will like it. And this one comes out in August, I think, so if it sounds intriguing to you, feel free to pick it up. It's got a really pretty cover.
It does. So mine for this was, again, one that I didn't think I was going to read, but I ended up rereading the entire Raven cycle, so I picked Blue Lily, Lily Blue. Lily is a flower. This is my favorite book in the Raven cycle. It's just, everybody knows about this series by now, but it's just this beautiful, whimsical friendship story that I just love these characters so much. And it definitely held up to being reread. Just love the story. It's great. So next up is History of Magic, read a historical fiction book.
I did not do this one.
Not do that one. Then we have Muggle Studies, read a Muggle nonfiction book.
I was going to read my Crow book and I didn't.
Your Crow book?
So I've got a different class instead.
And then we have Potions, read a book about or with alchemy in it. And the last class is Transfiguration, and that means we've all done this class. And that is read a book that deals with transfiguration, shape-shifting, or a similar theme, or has a cat on the cover.
So I chose Shadow of the Fox by Julie Kagawa, which is a fantasy novel that's coming out this fall, and it features one of the main characters can kind of shapeshift into a fox. And basically in this is like a Japanese inspired fantasy, and it's like every 1,000 years this like spirit will grant one wish to whoever holds these 3 pieces of this ancient scroll, and the pieces are scattered all over the land. And our main character Yumiko has the first piece. Like, she's been brought up in this temple and they have one of the pieces that they've been keeping safe. And then our other main character Tatsumi is like a shadow warrior, and he has been like brought up and trained to be this like really ruthless assassin, and his orders are to kill anyone in his way between him and the scroll. So it's like these two characters paths cross, and they realize that each other kind of has something the other person wants, and so they kind of agree to embark on this journey together to find the scroll, but they're both keeping secrets from each other. And it alternates between their perspectives, which is kind of cool. And this was like a bit slow for me at first, just because it was definitely a really involved fantasy. The author uses a lot of Japanese terms, which is awesome, but for someone who doesn't know them, like I had to keep like researching because I wanted to understand these things that she was describing. But it was really good, and like probably like by the middle I was super invested, and then by the end I was like obsessed. And I cared so much about the characters by the end, and things definitely end like on a cliffhanger. So I already want book 2, and it's gonna take ages to get it, but that's all right. Good. So I really liked this one, and I did end up giving it 5 stars, and I think it's gonna be a big hit this year.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Funnily enough, my one for this also has a character that can shapeshift into a fox, and that is The Door to the Lost by Jaleigh Johnson. So the sort of main setup of this is that there is a non-magical town and a magical town, but like 10 years-ish prior, there was like an event that basically like exploded the portal. But right before that happened, a ship with like 300 kids came through. And they all had like snow white hair, but all of their memories were completely gone. Like they did not remember anything about the magical land. And then they are like exiles. So they are not safe in this new place that they live in. So the two main characters are Rook and Drift, and they both are exiles, and so they maintain magical powers, but they have to really keep them a secret. So Rook can draw doors with chalk, like anywhere, and it will, she has to like focus her magic, and then it will open to wherever she needs it to. And then Drift can control the wind, so she can fly and she can ward people off and everything with the wind. And then near the beginning of the book, Rook has been sort of accidentally opening doors into this forest that she's never seen before. And a fox comes through, and it turns out that it is another exile who is a young boy. And then all sorts of other stuff happens from there. But I'm sorry to say, I definitely like the concept better than the story itself. It took me a while to get through this one. The writing wasn't completely my taste. I would recommend it. It's like if you or your kids enjoy middle grade fantasy, I think it is still a really cool book. It just didn't completely grab me. So I gave it a 3 on Goodreads, but that should be a 3.5, I would say.
Nice. Yeah, cool. So my last one we don't have here, because Crystal's borrowing it, but that is City of Ghosts by Victoria Schwab. Has a cat on the cover. So City of Ghosts is about a girl who has the ability to kind of step between our world and like the ghost realm. And her best friend is a ghost boy, so nobody else can see him, but they're best friends and they are constantly conversing with each other. Near the beginning of the novel, both her parents were like super into like the paranormal and like writing articles about the paranormal, get invited to make a documentary in Edinburgh in Scotland. So they moved to Edinburgh, and there are lots of ghosts there.
Yes.
So it was really fun. It wasn't spooky, but it was like super good. Yeah, I just love it. I want to reread it. I think for one of the best middle grade novels I've read in a really long time.
Cool. I haven't read this one yet.
I also read it, but I'm not using it for this readathon, but I also gave it 5 stars.
Yeah.
It was really good. Yeah, you're in for a treat, Sally.
Good. So huge thank you to Book Roast for coming up with this super fun readathon. We will leave a link to her original video down below, as well as our first video saying what we had all planned to read for this. If you enjoyed this video, give it a big thumbs up and subscribe for more videos every Wednesday and Saturday. Happy reading, and thanks for being awesome. Bye.
Bye.